creepy and geeky. Welcome to the Double Feature Podcast of Horror and More. I'm your host, Robert, and today is part 2 in a 4-part look at the Halloween franchise. On this episode, I'm joined by Jordana Bresett, the host of the Pretty Killer podcast and co-host of Feature Creatures DTF, and we're talking all about Halloween 4 through 6. Welcome to the show, Jordana.
Thank you for having me, Robert.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. I've seen you here and there, mostly. I see you commenting on Angel stuff a lot. So
yes,
I think that's how we got kind of hooked up by her. So.
Yep. She was like, I think he would be a great fit for this Halloween discussion. I'm like, sign me up because I will talk Halloween any day that anyone wants to talk about it.
Awesome. Yeah. Yes. All right. Well, since this is your first time on the show, we're gonna jump into a question that I'm asking everybody now. Is what was your first horror movie?
So my first horror movie, it was I watched it when I was super young, and it's not like one of the ones you would think, but it was When a Stranger Calls.
Okay. All right.
Yes, very real and realistic, and I was begging my mom to let me watch something scary because I was born in Orlando, so she worked at Disney. I was at Disneyland or Disney and Universal all the time, so they had like the Jaws ride, Beetlejuice, and Ghostbusters, and I think that kind of was my gateway into liking things of the horror nature.
Right.
And ended up watching that one, and let me tell you, that opening scene scarred me for quite some time. Like that, it's one of the best. The movie as a whole, it's not really great, but that opening is iconic.
Right. I've actually never seen it, so it's on my list to eventually see, but I have not seen it yet. I know it's based on that urban legend of the babysitter and the call coming from inside the house. And
yes, and it was done so well, and like the music was such a key factor because like since we're talking Halloween, the first time watching Halloween, remembering the theme and the music in it was just so terrifying. You know what I mean? Like it really set the tone of the movie, and I felt like with When a Stranger Calls, the opening sequence, and like when you watch it, you have to let me know what you think of it. Like especially the opening scene, it was just embedded in my brain, and it made me feel like I looked over my shoulder for such a long time because it was just so realistic and creepy. So that was my introduction to horror.
How old were you when you saw it?
I want to say I was 8 or 9. I was young.
Okay.
We were still living in Florida then, and I think it was my mom's way of getting back at me because I just bugged her for so long to watch a horror movie, and she's like, "Fine, I'll let you watch one that terrorized me as a kid," because she was a babysitter.
Gotcha.
So I think she was just trying to shut me up, which jokes on her because it opened up the gates of horror in general for me. So thanks, Mom.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's funny. That's hilarious. All right. Yeah. All right. Yeah. When I finally get a chance to watch it, I'll definitely let you know. It's one of those ones that I've heard about over the years and just hasn't crossed my path quite yet. So
I get that. It's not like it's known, but it's not like really, like I said, a lot of people complain that the movie as a whole isn't really that good, but very reminiscent and like a huge influence on Scream, like the opening sequence and the tension building and again, an iconic scene. So I love to recommend that to people who don't really know it, just to get the reaction, because it's usually like, oh shit, that's terrifying.
That's funny. Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah. No, it's I've heard good things. I haven't heard anybody really say anything negative about it. So it's anybody that has talked about it has talked about it with praise. So
that's good.
So yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the main topic of discussion today. We are talking Halloween 4 through 6, the Jamie Lloyd / Cult of Thorn trilogy.
Yes.
So this follows the the original two with um Laurie, and then the one-off crazy batshit Halloween 3. Then we're kind of supposedly back on track, but no Laurie. We get her daughter, who's like 8 in this movie, and Laurie's already dead by this point.
Yes.
Died in a car crash, and Michael's back, and he's out for he's out to I guess kill her. It's not quite that's what it seems like it's going towards, but it's never quite like because you never know Michael's motivations. So
yes. Yeah.
but that's the supposition, is that he is coming after her to kill her and again rid himself of any member of his family that
Yes.
there is. So
The next in line.
yes, yeah. So let's go ahead and start with number 4. How did you see all these movies? Did you I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm not sure. Did you see these in the theater? Did you see them on video?
No, I'm 37. So
Okay.
I watched 4. 4 was like the one that I always watched. Like that was the one that I
Okay.
always watched. I rented from the video store. And I know it's hit or miss with people. A lot of people like 4. A lot of people don't really like, like the 4, 5, and 6 aspect of the franchise. But I enjoy these movies, and I think out of the 3 that we're talking about, I think 4 is my favorite. So that was on like constant repeat for me when I was a kid. A lot of classic scenes, iconic scenes for me out of the franchise.
Right.
But I really enjoyed 4.
Yeah, 4 is for me. It's out of these 3, 4 is definitely the better one for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's I kind of like where they're going with the ideas and everything. It Like I said, you don't really like. We never understand Michael's motivations. We just assume that that's what he's doing. He's just killing to kill off his family for who knows what reason.
Yeah.
And now he just knows that all of a sudden after all these years he just suddenly knows and just shows up again. Like it's like it's been like I don't know 10 years. Yeah, it was 10 years since the original movie,
Yeah.
and so he just shows up out of nowhere, and she's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and kill this daughter of Laurie's, my niece,
Yeah.
and it's just
Who's
just
adopted. So like I'd love to know who he
yeah.
was talking to in the adoption system that gave out that information, because they get fired. Like
Right. Well, and that's the same thing with Lori. Lori had been like adopted by the Strodes. It wasn't like she was
yes.
going around like Myers, So it was just it's so bizarre. It's like, how does he know? And we kind of get that in the next movie, but
Yeah.
we'll go into that once we get there. But
Yes.
it's a but this one's good. I mean, we get the return of Loomis. Loomis gets crazier every movie. He just gets a little bit crazier.
He does, and
Um,
I feel like for me, like prime Loomis is 2. Like the opening of, I know we're not talking 2, but I feel like the
yeah,
opening of 2 when he's like, the guy, I've been trick or treated to death tonight, and he comes in with a line, "You don't know what death is," and
yeah,
he's unhinged, like he's had a bad night. And then
yeah.
you come into 4, and I love Loomis in this one, because you see the crazy side to him, but then like you get like the Loomis that's looking out for everyone's interests. He knows that Michael is evil because he has been his doctor. That this is coming from a place of protection and love, in a sense, because I always felt like Loomis loved Michael, and looked at him um, as weird as that sounds. I just feel like he knew that he was troubled to the point of no turning back, but he
Right.
always had that type of like I don't know, like you can see it when he's talking to him in the diner in 4.
Yeah. 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 It's I don't know. It's weird. Like Loomis doesn't it I don't know. Because he gets crazier and crazier each time. He just, I don't know. It's like he loses his effectiveness.
Yeah.
Not that he was very effective in the first, two movies as it was,
Right.
but it's just like, I don't know. As much as I like Donald Pleasance, and I do, I just feel like the character itself is so unhinged most of the time that he kind of undermines the whole like needing to kill Michael thing. It's like if somebody
Yeah.
had played it a little more straight and a little more sane themselves,
Hmm.
then I could understand that, that drive and that need to do that. But to play it so full tilt crazy like that just is, and I get that that's the writing and the characterization and everything, but it's just
Yeah.
like it's just bizarre to me that and I know people love Loomis and love that he is crazy nutbag, but it's just one of those things that for me, like, and so Halloween especially, everything from 4 on was pretty much a blind spot for me,
Hmm.
up until just a few years ago.
Yeah.
I'd watched the first 3 when I was a kid, and then through the 80s, there wasn't anything until number 4 came out in 88,
Correct.
and through most of the 80s, at least I guess, when did number 3 come out? In 83,
Oh, was three like
82.
yeah, early 80s. Yep.
So yeah, so it was 5 or 6 years in between, and so and in between that we got a slew of um uh Jason movies, and then the Freddy movies came out, and so we had these other slasher icons that like had come and kind of like were bigger than Michael,
Yeah.
and so for me, I never got the chance to watch any of them. I think I saw, like, and this will be for another episode, but I think I saw H2O um kind of not too long after it came out. But
Hmm.
Michael was never a big draw for me, because he just seemed to be, he was quiet like Jason, but Jason to me was cooler. So
Yeah. And Jason was brutal.
yeah, that and not that Michael isn't brutal, but just I don't know, it's just weird. I don't know. Michael just never really touched, like, really grabbed me like that.
Yeah.
And and even now watching them, like, it still is, like, if you compare all of them for me and everything, I would say that the Halloween franchise is kind of low on my list of slasher franchises.
Yeah.
But it's not that they're bad. They're generally okay. Most of them are pretty okay, uh, for the most part. So, and I really
Well,
like the new trilogy. So
see, and that's it's I love the franchise. I especially I'm like, my heart belongs to 1 and 2. Like I love those movies. I love
yeah,
3 as a standalone. And then I see like where the rest of the franchise goes off the rails. And I think
yeah,
that I appreciate for what it is because I watched that and that was like my thing as a kid. You know what I mean? So I think,
yeah,
but again, I was watching, like you said, Friday the 13th, like Jason Takes Manhattan, New Blood. Those ones were my favorite because that was around the time that I started getting into horror. And those were the ones that I watched first. And as cheesy and horrible as Manhattan is, that's like one of my favorites just because I'm a huge like sucker for bad horror. That was like top of my list. But I could see where the franchise kind of is low to people because it's not cohesive. Even when they try to be
yeah,
cohesive, there's no connection because nothing makes any sense. So like my mom, she just started watching like I told you before, she wasn't into horror and now she's opening up to the idea. So she watched the Scream franchise and then which is pretty self-explanatory. You know what I mean? Like you
yes,
don't really need to know too much. Then we get to Halloween and I had to send her a literal bracket of
yeah,
the timelines of like, so you have to watch 1 and 2 that goes into, in my opinion, like H2O. I love that storyline. So I'm like, watch 1, 2, and go into H2O. Then you need to watch 1 or 4, 5, and 6, and then you can watch. And she's just like, why do I need instructions to watch these movies? I'm like, it has to happen for it to make any sense.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, it's almost like because you have to do that, there's almost multiple, and there's multiple timelines, and so there's ways of watching it. So if you do like 4, 5, and 6, you just go 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, and then you're done.
yep,
You don't have to
yep,
watch any other ones. You can have a complete story that way. And
yep,
then if you don't like 4, 5, and 6, you can go 1, 2. H2O and Resurrection if you really want to.
Yep.
But if you don't, you can cut it off there. And then you can scrap all of that, just watch one and the new trilogy. It's like whatever your flavor is, whatever
Yes.
works best for you. It's kind of nice that they've actually kind of done that, where you can kind of mix and match however you want to do it. You don't have to watch everything to appreciate the overall what they're trying to tell you.
Exactly. And I do like that aspect of it, because there's people that are huge fans of the Thorn, and that.
Yes.
And I love it, because when we get in discussion, I just love hearing their point of view, because for me that one is like my least knowledgeable one, because I didn't understand it when I watched it as a kid. I just thought it was like,
right.
You know what I mean, like things as I see them, and I didn't really dive back into it to get to know it that much more, because
right.
It wasn't that important to me, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I still like.
And the version that was out for a long time, in terms of Curse of Michael Myers, was the theatrical version, and that one just doesn't make any sense. So,
right.
And we'll get to that.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just, yeah, this trilogy especially is this portion of it is it's just funky to me. Like,
yeah,
because each one, like, out of this trilogy tries to, tell something different, but trying to also maintain a continuity.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't all match up.
At all.
Even between 4 and 5, there's certain aspects that just are just like it just derails immediately. So,
yeah. And you would
because
think
they
that
tried to go
like,
with a different direction.
Yeah, and you would think that that would somewhat be like a cohesive, at least storyline, because it's 4 to 5, and it was almost in the same time frame, like that they came out. And so
it was like literally a year later that 5 came out. So it should have been like really on top of it. But this is coming from somebody who's talked about Friday the 13th, and the Friday the 13th movies have no cohesion, and they came out a year after each other, like throughout the 80s. Like every single one of the first 8 of them, from 80 to 89, those all came out. And so it's just, I don't know how they did that, but none of them make sense. That's not true. Some of them do make sense.
Yeah, they do, but I feel like with Jason that's okay, because Jason is just such a force. And I know Michael's a force, but Michael started out as, he was scary because of how we knew so little about him. Like, he was just a literal living person that was evil, that stalked these people for no reason. That's what scared me about him. But then when we started getting into like these newer, storylines and themes, I'm like, okay, but that doesn't make it scary for me. I mean, I don't want to say not scary, but it just kind of it lost my interest of how believable and how scary Michael was in 1 and 2 to like now.
So the thing about Michael that I think that would help overall, if they were to continue the franchise into something else now, and I think that this is where they need to kind of go with it, at least to make it work for me, would be that Michael is just this, like, he doesn't keep going back to Haddonfield. Like that would be my thing. Like, go to other places, show up, be the boogeyman that shows up to small towns, kills people on Halloween, and then disappears. And then that would make it more interesting. You wouldn't have to worry about his motivations, other than him just being a creepy guy who kills on Halloween.
Exactly. And that would be terrifying. And that would be perfection, because everyone, I mean, I say it freely. Everyone loves Halloween. Like, Halloween is just such a fun time for some, for a lot of people. That would be terrifying to have those types of movies come out where it's Michael Myers in a different town, and you don't know if he's coming to your town next.
Exactly.
I love that. And I think that's exactly what they need to do. Or they need to go with the Season of the Witch remake, something. Like, they need to touch on that at some point.
Yeah. Just kind of move on from Michael and just kind of just make it an anthology series like it was going to be intended to be.
Exactly.
Either way, it'll work out either way. But I think the, if they were to do that, just like the urban urban legend guy Michael just shows up in whatever random town and kills people type of thing would be a fun way to do it.
I
So
love that. I rally for that. That would be amazing.
yeah. I profess I did not come up with that idea. I read it somewhere else, but I wholeheartedly approve of that one.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I just don't want people thinking, hey, I read that somewhere. I did too. So don't get me wrong.
Don't for me.
Yeah. So, but going back to number 4 specifically, we get Jamie Lloyd, who is the 8-year-old daughter of Laurie Strode, played by oh my god, I'm totally blanking on her name now.
Danielle Harris.
Danielle Harris, yes, horror icon herself, who's gone on to do plenty of things, including being in the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. Mm-hmm. So she's got a very, very big history with this franchise. Yes. So, and she's in 4 and 5, and for some dumb reason they recast her in number 6. So, and we'll get to that. Yes. But yes, this is one of her early roles. She goes on to do where I saw her. I didn't even see her in these first. Like I said, I didn't even watch these until much later. But where I knew her from was "Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead" and from "The Last Boy Scout." So.
Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead was a movie that I used to watch when I was younger, and I completely yes to that movie.
I feel like you've got this like this weird trend of babysitter movies in your history. Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, Halloween, When a Stranger Calls.
I know. I used to read the Babysitter's Club or whatever books. So you're totally right. And funny, I've never been a babysitter, so
that's hilarious.
Yes,
that's so funny. But yes, but yeah, that's where I knew her from. Those 2 movies, and then going back and seeing her in these, I was like, oh, okay, because I do remember seeing the box art and stuff, and seeing the little girl in the clown costume and everything, and I was just like, okay, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. But I didn't realize it was her. And then, much later, once she's an adult and doing other horror movies and stuff, and finding out that she was in these as well, I was like, oh, okay, this is really cool, actually. Yeah. So, and I think she does a generally good job in this first one, in number 4. I think she does a good job in both. Especially for a child actor. Yes. A lot of child actors are not so good. Nope. But she does a really good job in this one.
I thought she was great in 4, and I think once we get to 5, when we can talk about obviously like how her character is different in that one, I can appreciate her acting skills and that. But I really enjoyed her in 4. Like I thought she had a great mini queen scream. She did. I think she did really good in 4.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think she's, I can see why she ended up being a bigger child actress through the 90s and stuff. Like I said, I saw her in 2 other movies that were right around that same time period. But she went on to do, she's still working today and still still doing horror. She even does a podcast now with Scout Taylor Compton from the Halloween movies as well. So it's she's still keeping her hand in it all. So
she's a babe in the horror community. A lot of people love her and think that 4 is iconic, and I'm for it.
Yeah, and I think that just goes to show, like, there's a with the kids who were grew up in the 80s and 90s, and watched that stuff during that time period on video and such and in cable, that she's like a part of that, because those Halloween movies and the other movies that I talked about, she's one of those people that a lot of kids growing up during that time would have recognized more. So I think that helps that recognition and that fandom for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Let's see. So, yeah, I don't actually have a lot to say about number 4. It's a good movie. It's not bad. It's like I said, it's, for me, it's kind of just it's average. There's nothing that really stands out for me. There's nothing really bad about it. I think it's interesting that they decided to kill off Lori, and just kind of move on with that, and probably more than likely because they just couldn't get Jamie Lee Curtis to come back, who seems like she's really not a horror person. Um,
Yeah, she's pretty vocal about not being into horror. I
yeah,
think a lot of that translates for me to it's just
just a
a cash
paycheck.
grab. Yeah,
Yeah,
in a sense. And as a Halloween fan, like a 1978 and 81 hardcore fan, it really hurts my soul to hear that because I
yeah,
thought, there, but I kind of I get it. That's not granted. That's what kind of she capitalized on Halloween and she became a household name, after
right.
that. But she did do a lot of other things, in like the mainstream comedy, um, True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I mean? Like she
Yeah,
has other um, franchises or film categories that she's in.
right.
But yeah, it was kind of weird to hear that she didn't really enjoy
Yeah,
making Halloween movies. But I think it was good what they did with her storyline and kind of had like the picture of her in Halloween,
yeah,
and Jamie saw that. But I liked Jamie. I liked that whole, even though it was completely random and like you can't really understand why he's so angry and wants to kill all of his family. Um,
yeah,
I felt like there was a lot of cool, for me being younger, a lot of the shots, like the opening scene with her in the bedroom and the mirror shot of him, like when the lightning crashes and you see him in the mirror.
yeah,
Um, I really liked a lot of those shots. That's what was
yeah,
like the
yeah.
most memorable for me, out of four, were like that. And I'm trying to think of what else was what I enjoyed. Oh, when they're pulling away in the cop car and he's standing in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
really like that
No, there
shot.
was yeah, there was a there, I think that technically, and visually it's a good movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just yeah, going back to the Jamie Lee Curtis thing, like it is weird that not weird. And I get it. Like she started out as a scream queen and with the first few movies she did, and then just kind of transitioned out of that. And once she saw success outside of that, she's like, well, I don't want to have to go back and do that at all.
Yeah.
But she's obviously dipped her toes back in, with H2O and then the newest trilogy. But I do think that, yeah, I think it's about the money. They give her enough money to, convince her to come back, and she's like, okay, yeah, fine, whatever.
Yeah. I'll
Um,
do it.
I'll do it. And like it's something that came up recently too, because both, talking about Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor Compton, they met her, I think it was at the Halloween Ends premiere, and
Mhm.
they came up to her and they were excited because they were like, oh, three you members of the Halloween franchise together, and they'd never met her before or whatever, and she kind of dismissed them because she's just like, oh, I don't know who you guys are.
Yeah, I read about
And I
that, and
was
that's like such a punch
that's
in the gut.
it's devastating. Like, and it was
Yeah.
just like, and I like Jamie Lee Curtis, don't get me wrong. I get that she doesn't like horror movies. She doesn't, from what I understand, she just doesn't watch them. They scare her,
Yeah.
and so I get that. But it does feel like a such a weird dismissal of everything, not to even know who they were. That, that just, it just felt wrong. Um,
I
so
agree. I think it felt like very, it came across as very snooty, in my opinion.
yeah,
And also too, I would have taken that as, for me, like if I were Jamie Lee Curtis, and obviously she knows how iconic, Halloween is, to have people be a part of that and to obviously like look up to her, I would have taken the opportunity just to like give a hug and say, hey, thanks. Like, why does it have to be known that I don't know you and be
yeah,
so dismissive? I think that's very, um, I think that's so rude on her part as someone who's an advocate of like, you know, accepting and loving of everyone and just being this like persona, and then hearing how badly she treated those two. I think that's I think it speaks volumes, and it kind of like left a sour taste in my mouth about Jamie Lee
Yeah.
Curtis.
Yeah.
Because girl power. I would have just given him a hug and been like, "Great to meet you." Take a picture
Yeah.
and then like move along. Like, why did it need to turn into this like dismissive? I'm better than you. You're nothing. Obviously, there's something because
Yeah.
they were there.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was very disappointing to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I get it, if she just doesn't know them, but it just, I like we said, I think that it's just, at least say, oh, hey, it's good to meet you, take a picture and move on, and then they could have a good story to tell and it wouldn't have been something negative. It's just, and I don't want to get down on Jamie Lee Curtis. I get it, to a degree that, she just didn't recognize them because she's never watched their movies.
Mm-hmm.
And, but, and didn't do any like, and she didn't need to know any of that history because their movies never were referenced in the later movies she did. So, because
Exactly.
H2O kind of wiped out 4, 5, and 6, and she
Yep.
didn't need to worry about that. And
Yes.
so it's just it sucks, but it's like, it's, I don't know. There's not much we could do about it. It was just one of those things that I just, wanted to remark about, that I just felt like, especially with Danielle Harris being such an important part of the franchise herself, that it just, it's just one of those things that was just like, man, that sucks.
Yeah, that
So,
I felt horrible for her because like think of it, she came into it when she was a kid. And I'm
yeah,
sure, that had some sort of I couldn't imagine being a kid and being on set of a Halloween movie and having Michael Myers chase me, even though knowing full well it's fake. I mean, you're still a kid, and
yeah,
so I'm sure some of that stuff could have been like a little bit much for her. But I just, again, like you said, a simple half hug and a picture would have sufficed instead of
yeah.
flexing your A-list celebrity muscle. But that's
Yeah. Oh, man. All right.
it.
But yes. Uh
Yes.
so the rest of this movie, we get to the end and Michael's grabbed her. He's trying to, I guess kill her. I don't know. It's still vague, because he
Right.
doesn't actually actively try to kill her at any point. He does hold on to her and everything, but doesn't, like, because I'm sure he could have killed her at any point.
Yeah. At
And
any point.
didn't. And so it's kind of one of those things where, is he trying to kill her or is he just trying to grab her and take her,
Yeah.
for whatever. But it's, so we get to the end, she sees him taken down, she grabs the knife, and then for some reason, like somehow, this at the end, she goes and attacks her adopted mother.
Yeah.
And we don't find out till the next movie, but I assumed she killed her. But when we moving into the next movie, we find out no, she wasn't killed. She was just seriously hurt.
Yeah.
And so we go into the next movie. We're like, we end this movie thinking, oh my god, she's now, Michael's dead and now she's the new killer. Like she's she's in the clown costume. She's all bloody. She's the new Michael.
Yeah.
And which is it's an okay way to end the movie.
Yeah.
Um, passing on the torch in a way.
With Loomis screaming,
Yeah.
acting it like his crazy old self.
Uh, and then we get to the next movie, which is like peak crazy Loomis.
Yeah.
And then, but it's a year later.
Yep.
So we don't get anything. They jump ahead a year, and Jamie's in the hospital, and and she hasn't been able to talk ever since she tried to kill her adopted mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's her adopted sister, who kind of went through a lot of this stuff with her and everything, still visiting her and still trying to take care of her. I don't think you really see the parents in this one.
No. Yeah.
You see the sister and the sister's friend more than anything. And it's but now she can't talk, but now she has this psychic connection to Michael, which she didn't have before. Um, there's literally nothing in the whole series that's connected this in any way, shape, or form. But now we have this new psychic connection.
Yes, which it's so weird because it's like 4 and then this. So you're trying to like, did Michael transcend into Jamie?
Right.
You're kind of like,
because that's at first she's just seeing things, and you're like, well, does that mean he's back, or does that mean she's just having visions, like just imagining things?
Yeah.
And then people are dying, and it's like, well, is she like, it doesn't really leave it that ambiguous that she's killing them or anything like that, because there's obviously somebody killing them, and it's fairly quickly you learn, yes, Michael's still alive. He got away, and he fell in that well and came out a drain pipe.
Oh yes, with that opening with the gentleman with the parrot, with the
yes,
which I thought was when I watched it, I thought it was just so funny because like he takes him in and then kills him, and then I loved his escape into the water. It's just so cheesy. Thinking back on it, I'm like, wow, it's like literal Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Now, this movie is my second least favorite of the whole franchise. Of every one of the movies, this one's my least favorite. And just because this one seems just so, it's like they kind of took the promise of having Jamie be the killer from the last one. And not that I really like that idea, because I really don't.
Yeah.
But to kind of like sideline her and make it so that she can't talk the whole time, and so she's like struggling to like do stuff and point out things and everything, which it's just like, just write it down, like
exactly.
You're 9 years old, you can write. So
it's like this communication barrier. For what reason? Like, and I love that you point that out, because like you said, they have this ending where you're like left in the air and you're like, okay, so what happened? Like, is she now Michael? Does she have is this evil passed on to her? Then you get to 5 and it's like, oh no, she's fine. I mean, she's not fine because she can't speak, and he's back. But like, what was the purpose?
Yeah.
In a sense, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I agree with that. And then the whole communication part here, right? It's like you see how frustrated she is, and it's like, grab a goddamn pencil and just write down Michael's here.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's just that's all bizarre. And then like Loomis is like crazier. Like he just is waiting for her to snap. And like he just keeps like barging into her room and just wait, like basically just kind of sitting there waiting for her to snap in front of him. And it's like, dude, get the hell out, man. Like, let this little girl be. And
I know at one point he's like grabbing kids. Remember when Top, or what's his name, Billy or whatever his name was, they're at the Halloween party and he like grabs them. He's like, do you know where Jamie is? And the kid's like, like he's like so much, and it's just like, calm down, Loomis. Like, you don't need
to dial it back. Now I know that he actually had I think problems with this portrayal of it in this movie. He thought it was too much also. So, which I was glad to hear, because I was just like, please tell me somebody on this set like was not happy with the way things were going.
Yes. And I wish they would have listened to him and maybe dialed it back, because I think these ones could have been a little bit more as serious as 1 and 2 if they would have made him less over the top, because they kind of put Michael on the back burner, and it seemed like it was like Loomis and like Jamie's story that was like the main, which I kind of get, but like when you watch a Halloween movie, you're really watching it for Michael Myers, for me.
Well, and not only that, but this was called The Revenge of Michael Myers. So it's like, where's this revenge at? Like, when's it coming? Like, what's going, so it's like, and this has one of the worst masks of the series too. It's just horrible. It just looks like, and don't get me wrong, most of the masks through this series are questionable at best.
Horrible.
But this one was just like, it's not even like, they don't even try to tuck it in. So it's like, it just looks bizarre the whole time.
It reminds me of like a bird. Like 4 wasn't as horrible, but like all the drama with like the masks in 4, because you saw like different colors and like different hair style, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
for 4. But like I really despised 5 because it reminded me of a bird. Like it just had like a very weird like nose, like pokey nose looking thing. And I the least scary out of the bunch too. Like it just didn't have
Yeah.
any real memorable moments where you're like, okay, that was kind of creepy. I feel like 5 didn't deliver for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And this one also it's I just looked it up. This one's kind of the beginning of the true like Cult of Thorn kind of
Yes.
stuff, because we just get this mysterious man in black uh walking around. You don't really know anything, until towards the end, and we still don't know anything. But
Yeah.
it's just this guy is coming to Haddonfield. Um and uh it's just like it's funny too, because it's like halfway through this trilogy they decided, okay, well, let's throw in some kind of other thing that's going on to explain Michael's thing, not just this connection to Jamie, but that there's something else
Yeah. As
going
if we
on.
need that.
Yeah.
Like let's
um
complicate this way more than it needs to be.
yeah, it's just bizarre.
Mhm.
um let's see. There was something else I was going to say, but I was trying to make sure that I had the right movie, because oh yes, okay, so this one's also got the 2 bumbling cops with their own wacky theme every time
Oh
they're on,
my
and I'm like,
God.
why? Like, okay, one, they weren't that bumbling at first. Like the first time you see them, they're just kind of okay, they're mildly goofy,
Yep.
but but they added the weird music to it, and like, boing, and I was just like, what the hell, really? Like, why did we, like, you deflate every ounce of like tension by, even if you had bumbling cops, don't get me wrong, even if you had them in there, but to add the wacky music on top of it was just like super, like, why? Like,
I'm
this
so
movie
glad that
on so many levels is just stupid.
I'm so glad that you touched on that, because I can see that scene in my head where it was Rachel's in the house and the dog is like
Yeah.
barking and the cops, because the dog got loose, and then you hear and you did the sound effect.
Yeah.
The poing, and then it's like the horns are like "Pow, pow, pow, pow," in
Yeah.
the background as they're walking. Thank you, because that scene potentially could have been one of the better Michael stalking scenes, and then you
Yeah.
ruined it by these 2 bumbling cop, like that really weren't even that bad. Like
No.
I love that you
Like,
pointed that out.
yeah, and then like later on they're like, oh yeah, well, we're not going to bother with these stupid kids, blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
or then when they do, like, they almost shoot the one kid who is pretending to be Michael. It's like, you know that could have been more tension filled.
Yes.
They're like, and it was up until they kind of deflated it again. And it's just like, I don't know, there's so many instances where they added this weird, like, wrinkle to the movie that definitely did not need to be there. And
Yeah.
it did not add anything. It made the whole process that much worse.
It really did, and I feel like it just made the franchise, like, laughable in a sense, because they could have
Yeah.
done so much with a Michael timeline if they would have kept it cohesive, if they would have kept the same mask style from the original, because I love
Yeah.
a crisp white 78 mask. I still, to this day, think that that's one of the most eerie, looking serial killers,
Yeah.
slashers, was original Michael Myers.
Yeah.
And then they turned it into this mix up of 5 of like you
Yeah.
said, we don't really know what's going on from 4. They're adding another element, then you're adding like comedy. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
And not even good comedy. It'd be fine if they were adding like good comedy, but the Halloween franchise as a whole never had this level of comedy to it. It
Right.
wasn't like, and so to add this, and to add it in such a way that really detracts from the overall rather than adding to it, just like derails so much of it.
Yeah,
for
it
me
makes zero
anyway.
sense. And like
Yeah.
a good reference to that, and I know that you said that you're a fan of the newer trilogy was for me, I thought 2018 Halloween had a decent amount of comedy, but it didn't
Right.
really like to affect too much of the seriousness that they did in H18. So
Right.
I can respect that because the dad delivering some of his lines and the conversations that they were having, some of them are pretty funny.
Yeah.
Julian, even like adding him into the element because he was funny as hell.
Yeah.
That's okay if you do it in that sense, in that regard. But when you do this horrible,
Because that's more natural. That's people just being people,
yes,
and having the comedy flow out of that, rather than, and because people in general, I mean, we can be funny,
yeah,
but to
yeah,
to add this, like, to make them intentionally bumbling, and to make this, like, and to give them that goofy soundtrack, was just like it just, you're trying to intentionally, you know goose the audience with a laugh of some sort, rather than just having it be natural, and it did not work at all.
yeah. And they could have used that time to build a scary scene with him, trying to get into the house and doing the shots of him, the from outside the house when they were looking in and he was standing in the window. Um, is that 5 or is that 6? Either way, they could have done something in that amount of time with the cops to add a scary element compared to what they gave us. So,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
The
It's
scene
just
is now like replaying in my head as we're talking about it. I just keep seeing it. I can't help but hear the noises.
yeah. It's,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my God. It's just too much.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just weird. This movie on so many levels just doesn't work. And then we get to the end, and it's the man in black, like, goes to the police station. Everything's like resolved or whatever, and they're in the police station. And
Yeah.
then the man in black leaves, or arrives at the police station, and chaos ensues, off screen. We just hear
Yeah.
shooting and screams, and then he takes Jamie, and that's where it ends.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, so the next movie's gonna be her again,
Yeah. Like, where do we
and
go from here?
where do we go from here? And then we go to Halloween 6, the
Yes.
Curse of Michael Myers.
Yes.
And it's now 5 years later, and a new actress is in the role of Jamie, who's screaming down a hallway and giving birth to a child. So we're presuming at this point she's about 15,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is, weird on its own.
Very weird.
And two, that they did not get Danielle Harris, who I have found out that she did want to be in it. They just didn't want to pay her the money for it, and they got another actress to do it, because presumably she was cheaper.
That's
So
horrible. That's
yeah,
so sad.
yeah. But on the other hand, this is the debut film of one Paul Rudd.
I was
Um,
just gonna say, but we got the introduction of the future Ant-Man.
yes. And I myself, I'm a huge Paul Rudd fan. I love him. I think he's hilarious in pretty
Yeah.
much everything is. He's been in, this is also the year he uh, was in Clueless,
Yep.
which was, probably his bigger break, because I don't think this movie did well enough to jump him out. So it's good that he made both of these movies around the same time, so that he could use Clueless to get better work. Um,
Yeah.
With that being said, I think he's the best part of this movie.
I do
Um,
too.
Now, I I've when I've seen these movies, so I back in 2018, when I kind of deep dived into horror, up
Mhm.
until that point I was more of a casual fan.
Yep.
That So I went back, and one of the first things I bought was the 10 disc set of the Halloween franchise that they had out at Walmart at the time.
Yep.
And it had everything up until that point. And but the only version they had on there was the theatrical version of Curse of Michael Myers. So that was the version I saw.
Yep.
which is horrible. It's not good. It makes no sense. This whole cult of thorn stuff throughout it. They
Yep.
try to introduce it and explain it, but it's a garbled mess.
Yes.
And then but I've heard there was a producer's cut and I didn't get to see it. I now have the 4K of everything. And
Oh.
so I do have the producer's cut, and that's what I watched this time. And I'm telling you now, that movie makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's still not the greatest. It's still like, I think it's just below number 4 for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of middle of the road. But it makes a lot more sense. And I think that the Cult of Thorn aspect is a lot more interesting in this version than it definitely more interesting and more coherent than
Yes.
in the version that we got in the theatrical cut. So,
And, and and that's in there was such a big debate about theatrical producer cut.
right.
There was with all the Michael with Jamie, and that one was that theatrical or was that the producer cut?
Which one? Sorry.
The storyline of Michael like that got Jamie pregnant or whatever that whole like
Oh, I
direction
don't
that they
think
were.
that's in either one, actually.
So what one was that one? Because that's what I get hung up on is what cut is that? Because when people were talking about it, I'm like, I don't remember that being in any of the movies that I saw unless I was completely oblivious to it, but I don't
I think
think I
that's just a I think that's just a fan theory rumor type thing.
gotcha.
Because I haven't seen that anywhere. I do remember reading something somewhere about that, but yeah, that's not in either of the movies. Um,
Okay.
I know that the differences like with the opening are that I think if I'm recalling correctly, because I did kind of go back and kind of gloss through the theatrical cut after I watched the producer's cut. But
Yep.
one of them starts with Paul Rudd's narration, and the other one starts with Donald Pleasance's narration. And I think the producer's cut is the one with Donald Pleasance.
Yes.
Um,
Okay.
and so yeah, um, yeah, it's a bizarre movie. She's a captive of the cult of Thorn,
Mhm.
and she's having her baby, she's giving birth and then having to give up the baby to the cult. But
Yep.
then like the nurse or whatever, you know, brings the baby back to her and tells her to run.
Yes.
And so she runs out bleeding, manages to get away, um, and and we find out that throughout all this that Michael is being controlled by this cult of Thorn, that
Yes.
he hasn't been acting of his own free will this entire time, apparently, is what they're trying to tell us.
Yes.
That he's been targeting Jamie and Lori and everybody else on their bidding, which is bizarre.
So bizarre.
So
So weird.
it as much as I say it's coherent, it also doesn't make a lot of sense uh, in
It
the
doesn't
end.
what annoys me about it is that again, and I'll go back to this every single time we talk about it. What made Michael scary was that he was just a normal human,
Yeah,
which like you and I, and he was evil, and he was the boogeyman, and he stalked people, and it could have been, a random person that he stumbled upon when he escaped Smith Grove. You know what I mean? Like that's
right.
what made it scary. And then now we're getting into this narrative of he's being controlled by this cult, and you're like, what? Like, oh, okay, I guess, like you said, that could be coherent, but like, why are we going down this avenue? Like, what's I just I guess I didn't understand it. And for this one though, I will say I enjoyed the gore. And I'm not like a huge gore person, but I enjoyed
Right.
like getting back into like the Michael-esque killings in a
The fun
sense.
kills. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and even like um the scene you were talking about when the nurse hands off the baby to Jamie, and then when she turns around, it's the
Yeah.
darkness, and he kind of comes into frame, like classic shots from 1 and 2. I appreciated that. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is and I felt like the score was kind of intense too because it had like the guitar and it was heavy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like
This was more of a rock tinged. Yeah,
Yes. And I
that's cool.
liked that, but then in the back of your mind, you're still having to think about like this whole cult thing. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think this is interesting because it could have connected to three, even. They
Yeah.
could have picked up threads from number three and folded three back into the narrative.
Yes.
And I think that would have made it like even more interesting that we finally get this connection. Still feel like there's a tenuous connection at the core of it, that you
Mhm.
could make an argument that three is fully connected to the franchise, um,
Yeah.
and through this movie. Um, and we so I think that by doing that, like that would have made it a lot more interesting and a lot more cohesive to the story that we're getting now, um
Yeah.
in this movie.
I agree.
And
I love three. So I'm any opportunity to weave it in or to have any sort of tie back to it.
right.
Um, I would have been for it and I'm for it still.
Yeah. Yeah, no, three is my favorite of the whole series. Like,
Oh,
it's yeah, because it's
it's
just
awesome.
bizarre and fun.
Yeah.
And it's just, you can watch that one alone and not
Yeah.
have, any connection to anything. Um and just have fun with it and just go back to that truly anthology aspect of the way it was. Um
Yes.
so, but I would argue that, one and two are pretty firmly entrenched up there. They all kind of, tie each other, for me in terms of classicness. So,
Yes. I
and
agree
again,
with
that's
you.
because I saw them as a kid, and so
Yeah.
it's
I
it's. But go ahead.
I people get so upset about three. I hate three. Three is the worst. It's stupid. It has nothing to do with Mike Myers. And it's like, it wasn't supposed to. That
Right,
wasn't even what Halloween wasn't even supposed to be this. Halloween was supposed
right.
to be an anthology and it was supposed to be different stories. And granted, I'm happy that we got what we did from, some of the movies, but three is amazing. And three is just such
Yeah,
a good movie on its own. And there's so much about it that I love. And, when I was a kid and I watched three, I was upset. I'm like, where the hell's Michael Myers? But then the movie kept me engaged and I liked it. So I didn't mind it. And as I got older, I would find
right.
myself watching it, not even on a Halloween kick, just watching Season of the Witch. And I loved it. And it's not
Yeah,
like, because I'm very, like, my perspective on horror is you know you can like what you can like whatever you like. I'm here for it. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Let's talk
yes,
about it. Even if I didn't like it, maybe I'm missing something. Let's have a discussion. I don't
yeah.
hate on people for their choice, but when I hear people get so angry about
Oh, I
H3, I
know.
just laugh. I'm like, it's not that bad. Like, there's
I think
other
it's
things.
gotten a critical reappraisal or especially over the last few years. I don't know. I hear a lot more people praising it than shooting it down. Or if
Yes.
they don't like it, they're just like, yeah, it's just not for me. And
Yep.
so I'm starting to see this nice change among the community
Hmm.
that not all parts of it, because some people are just always going to be sticklers and just go, no, that's a shit movie. But
Yep.
I'm starting to see a lot more people who are starting to go, I don't personally like that movie, but I appreciate that you like it, and or
Yes.
that I accept that you like it, and you can enjoy that for
Hmm.
whatever. And there's a lot less of that, like, oh my god, you like that movie, what's wrong with you? um
I
so
know. It's like, what's wrong with you? Because it's great. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, exactly.
Can I
um
ask? Can I ask you a question
sure.
real quick? How did you? So you watched the whole new trilogy, right? Like
Yes, the David
H.
Gordon Green. Yeah.
Yep. How did you feel when you saw the font in the opening of Ends? Like, did you think?
Yes. Well, see,
Yes.
I didn't recognize, I wouldn't have recognized it first off, but somebody
Yeah.
had posted about it before it even came out, that the
Mhm.
Halloween font, the font of that was taken from number three. And the Halloween font from Halloween Kills was also the font from number two. So each
Yeah.
one, he did that each time to tie it to at least, that little bit to the movies. He was honoring those movies. And so
Yes.
I thought that was really cool the way he did that with Halloween Ends, that he did the same font as Halloween 3. So
I know I was like we went opening night and I was in my chair, like geeking out, thinking we were to get like Silver Shamrock Factory, something. I was so excited. And then, I mean, we won't get into ends, but that didn't happen. And I was very upset because I was hoping we were going to get some sort of like minuscule nod to
yeah.
Season of the Witch
Yeah.
in there. And when I saw that font, I was so excited.
Yeah. I
But
mean, arguably he had already, referenced it with the kids and the masks and everything like that. So I'll
yes.
give him that pass that at least at least he had already kind of, given us that little tidbit. So
You're right. You're totally right about that. I mean, not that I forgot that because that was one of the things that I loved, and I loved in Kills at the merry-go-round with all the other
yes.
people that had the mask on. So you're right. Thank you, David Gordon Green, for that nod.
No, and that's when people like talk about those movies too. It's like I don't want to get too deep into it because I do. I've already done an episode on that.
Yes.
But but I think that those movies are really good because he obviously had a love for, especially the original trilogy,
Yes.
or the original first three. And
Mhm.
so, getting those nods here and there, was nice. It was one of those nice little things where he didn't, it was background stuff, and you got to enjoy that aspect of it without it overtaking the movie either. This was a new story that he wanted to tell, and I think he told a good trilogy. I enjoy the trilogy as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, quite a bit more than most of the rest of the Halloween movies. So
Yeah, that was a very
that's me.
divided time. And that
Oh
was,
yeah.
I think that was the worst because I've been a horror fan my whole life, but I came into the horror community in 2021,
Oh,
22, I
okay.
want to say, is when I started my page on Instagram, and then I was late to the game doing the podcast, so I released episodes after. But I'm glad that I did it the way I did. But that was the first time that I actually saw like a negative, horrible, like just bad energy in the horror community is
Oh
when
yeah.
Ends came out, because that was like
It
that
was
was
very divisive. Yeah.
very divisive and very, if you didn't like it, you're stupid, you don't understand Halloween. If you did like it, you're stupid because that's
Yeah.
not Halloween. And it's like,
Yeah.
where do you want my opinion to be?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like what
Yeah.
answer should you would pick for me to have? Because again, this is open to interpretation. So like,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm happy that people enjoyed Halloween, and I'm happy that Michael Myers was still on the big screen in 2023.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty
Yeah.
awesome to go from 78 and have it longevity like it does. That makes me happy. Even if I didn't
Yeah.
enjoy it, I'm happy that that's happening.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
that's where I love the passion that the horror community has, um, for the most part.
Yeah.
I have other fandoms that I have that I love. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm a big comic book fan.
Yep.
And so those fandoms can be very toxic as well. And
Yes.
so I kind of keep out of that realm, of that kind of stuff, because it's just those seem even more toxic than horror fans. Horror fans, you get toxicity here and there, but I think by and large, that the horror community is, pretty good.
Yeah.
um it's much more accepting, than a lot of the other stuff, especially of stuff like, Halloween Ends, where it's divisive, and you have an intensity for maybe the first couple of weeks, and then it dies down. People just start to go, okay, well, you know what, I don't like it, but I'll accept that you like it, and whatever,
Hmm.
and people just kind of move on. um
Yeah.
so, and that's kind of nice, so,
It's
because
true.
not every movie's going to be for everybody. I mean, that's where it comes down to. Like these movies, this Cult of Thorn trilogy, these are kind of low on my list.
Yeah.
I'm probably not
Mhm.
going to watch them that often,
Yep.
but I appreciate those people who really like them and really enjoy them, and I'm glad they exist for those people.
That's exactly how I am. I'm happy that that's their movie. Like, because I have that with things that are like very important to me, and I'm happy that other people have that. And I'm not gonna yuck someone's yum, and I'm not gonna be,
Yeah.
nasty about it, because that's not fair. And you know, the whole ends thing, like I just, whatever. It is what it is with
Right.
you know what I mean? But like, I have heard that the Star Wars, fandom is very toxic. Like,
Yeah.
and
Portions of it,
yes, portions of
yeah.
it, but I can see it because not that I support toxic and like that type of, behavior, but when you truly love something, you get to the point of defending it, or,
Right.
trying to make your point. I understand. So I get it, but I definitely try to like not lose sleep over stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
if I don't
get
like.
like being disappointed in things. Don't get me wrong. I get that people are disappointed in stuff. I'm disappointed in things that, like, I get a high hope for something that's going to come out, and then I watch it and it's not quite what I wanted out of it. But I'm
Yep.
like, okay, you know what? I'm not the one who created it. I will have to respect that they went with something else, a different idea than what I thought this was going to be. You know,
Yep.
I'm not the one who got to make this. If I want to make this, I'll go make my own version or something, like that's
Yes.
how I always feel about it. It's like, go make your own version of it. I mean, you, it won't be official, but
Yeah.
there's plenty of people making fan films, you
Yeah.
know, as
Yep.
long as you don't, try to make money off of it. Most people are pretty cool about it. So
Yeah. And I support that fully too. Like, if that's what you want to do it. But I just, like tying back into it, it's just
yeah,
like these three really aren't like high on my list either.
yeah,
But they are a part of the franchise. So you have, at some point you have to kind of dissect it. You have to
yeah.
touch on it. So
And getting back into this curse of Michael Myers, like,
yes.
so, I really want to talk about Paul Rudd. He, like, for somebody who this is like one of his very first acting jobs, he, to me, is doing such a great job.
Yeah.
He's playing it very, like, he's playing it kind of hammy, but not in a way that is detrimental. Like, he's playing it over the top, but just enough that you feel like this version of Tommy Doyle is slightly crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but but in the slightly crazy that he's not wrong. So this is kind of like where, because he's a survivor of the original Michael Myers, thing from number one.
Yeah.
And so he survived this. He's been, keeping an eye on things. He's kind of like how Laurie is in 2018.
Absolutely.
And
100%.
he's not as militant and not as super prepared, but he's been listening, and he's been waiting, and he's been gathering evidence about this cult of Thorn that he's
Mhm.
discovered. And he's the guy who knows this thing, and he's actually the one to stop him with rune stones. Like, it's so funny and bizarre that he just basically just goes, okay, well, I'm going to throw these rune stones down, I'm going to stop it, and he does, and it works, and Michael just walks away, uh seemingly cured.
Yeah, like, okay,
So
done deal. Like, I wish this as simple as it was before. You know what I mean? Like in other
yeah,
movies, like this is the formula. They should have been doing it. And I loved his performance in this movie.
yeah,
I really did, because like you said, you go through something as traumatizing as being attacked by Michael Myers in this fictional world. You're going to be scarred. You're going to have
yeah,
trauma issues. You're going to be a little bit on the nutty side, because what, doesn't happen to most people happened to him. So of course, and he had his finger on the pulse.
yeah.
So I enjoyed him. A lot of people did not like his performance and thought that he was a horrible actor. I did not mind it at all.
Yeah, I think he's really good in it. He's what elevates that whole movie.
Hmm.
And in this one we get Loomis, but Loomis is dialed way back in this one, like
Yeah.
especially after the last one. He's actually, pretty sedate in this one.
Hmm.
um he's
Yes.
just kind of sleepwalking through this. And I get it though. He was sick at the time, and he wasn't doing a whole lot. And so I appreciated that, he did get the one last movie in. And you know, but it is weird though too, because the curse does get passed to him. which was a bizarre thing too, because it was like, that was kind of the end goal for the
Yeah.
Cult of Thorn, was to pass the curse from Michael onto Loomis.
Hmm.
But it was like, why are you trying to pass on this curse onto Loomis, who's elderly? Like, you're wanting Loomis to go out and start killing people, and like it
Yeah.
that's the parts that didn't make any sense to me.
Because he's
So
like going to be going home and having a cup of sleepy time tea at 7 o'clock, and he's going to bed. Like, he's not going out to murder people. He's not going to be on the prowl like Michael. He's ready for
yeah.
bed.
And maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but because I'm assuming that originally they were going to put the curse in. Well, I'm not certain. Were they going to sacrifice the baby, or were they going
I,
to put the curse on the baby? So
I
that's the part where I get confused at too.
that's where I was confused, because for me, what I was thinking was that they were going to sacrifice the baby. And
Okay.
then, yeah, that's what I thought. But then passing it on very well could have been, because I thought that's what was happening with Jamie, was that they were passing it on to her because she was of the
Yeah.
bloodline of, Michael Myers, and she was going to be the next person to be evil.
Right.
So I guess you're right. Maybe I just haven't known this whole time, but I thought it was
Yeah.
sacrifice, but it could be,
But
it
yeah,
could,
and then they end up passing it on to Loomis. At the end, he gets the tattoo, like, weirdly, like, mystically transferred to his wrist, and like, it's so bizarre. I'm like, that, like, even with this producer's cut being more coherent, there's still some stuff I'm missing.
yeah,
And if
unquestionable.
some listener can explain it to me, please do. So
Yeah, I'd love to hear it too, because I think I never focused on six because, like you said, it was low on my list. Like, it was one that I would throw on if it was like a marathon. Then I
yeah,
wanted to watch
yeah,
the whole franchise, or usually around Halloween time, I'll always run through all of them. But
right,
this isn't one that I throw on when I have downtime and I want to watch something scary. I'll find
right,
something else to watch.
yeah,
Like,
exactly, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. Yeah, this one, like I said, this batch of movies definitely is not going to get a lot of replay. For me,
Mm-mm.
it'll just kind of depend on the moment or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely very low on the list.
Yes. But Michael was, I felt like, in the times that we saw him, I felt like I appreciated seeing more screen time with Michael, and like
Yeah,
the dad getting the step, or the father getting his, what was coming to him, because he was such a dick.
yeah, yeah,
Just remember,
definitely.
like, the whole, with Danny and slapping her and just being a
Yeah,
not nice person. I was like, you totally deserve that. You
yeah, but the mom totally didn't deserve it, so that sucked.
I
So
know that was such a horrible scene, and I loved her. I felt so bad for her, and that was like
yeah.
so brutal with the blood splatter on the sheet. I was like, "Oh my god." Like, okay.
Oh man, yeah. This movie's just full of weird stuff. Like, because that's true too. Because then they were also influencing Danny, like trying to get him to, like, kill the dad, or to, like, do something else. So it's like, what?
Yeah.
This cult was so weird. Like, there was so many, like, spinning plates as to what they were trying to do, that it
Yeah.
it didn't gel together at the end. So
Yeah, and missed the mark, like, because if it would have been, like a straight line of what they were going for, that I think it would have been a lot more successful. But I just felt like
right,
it was just like him with the knife to the dad, and then, like you said, the whole Loomis transfer. And I mean, the other thing too that I loved out of six was the end shot in the was it the operating room, and it was like the strobe light scene, and all the nurses and all the people in
and
there
that's in the
getting.
theatrical cut. Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah,
really enjoyed that, just for like the visual aspect of it. I thought that was kind of a cool shot um out of it. But that, I mean, that's it. Like, that's the stuff that stands out to me, is like that
yeah.
scene, the disc jockey that is in the tree, and the little girl's like, "Oh, it's raining
Oh
red."
yeah, yeah,
Like, that scene, 'cause I
yeah.
remember when it first came out, I didn't see it in theaters, I saw it on pay-per-view. I'm, like, aging myself, and, when I watched it, I was like, "Oh my god," because I wasn't expecting that,
Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah, for
Yeah.
the visual
This
aspect, I was
the
into
movie
it.
is just so bizarre. There's so many weird like things going on. And again, between the theatrical cut and the producer's cut, you get all this disjointed stuff going on too. And it's funny though too, because Paul Rudd is the one to take him out in both versions. You get the Runestone version and the producer's cut where he just kind of purges the Cult of Thorns influence over him, and then in the theatrical cut he jabs him with like a bunch of needles in this I guess sedative or something, and takes him down that way. So it's like, hey, you know what, Paul Rudd got to be the hero, got to take out Michael Myers twice, so
that's okay, my book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, for that alone, like I would suggest to anybody, if you're interested, watch the producer's cut, and watch it mostly for Paul Rudd's performance. I think he does a really good job, especially for somebody who's a first time, or not first time, but maybe early in his career, and to enjoy kind of what he does in this movie.
Yes. I love Paul Rudd, and I was a huge fan of Clueless, so I thought it was amazing to have like a horror aspect of him, and to have Josh, the college boy, and all that, because I think he's great, and I still love him to this day. I think he's amazing. I think it's great that he's an Avenger.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel like he's someone that you wouldn't assume would be an Avenger, but the man never ages. He has that youth serum that like no one can figure out. So kudos to you, Paul Rudd.
Right. Yeah. No, I've loved him since Clueless, and I've been following him along the way. I wouldn't say I'm a super fan where I've seen all of his movies, but I've seen a good portion of them, and I enjoy quite a few of them. So yeah, it was definitely very much a surprise to see him pop up as Ant-Man in the MCU. So a very pleasant surprise, because he does a really good job in that. So
I agree. I think he's perfect for it.
Oh, very much. So is there anything else we want to say about 4, 5, or 6 that we haven't gotten to?
I think we covered as much as we could from those movies.
I think it's kind of been a gloss over most of them, but I think that we hit as much as we could for sure.
Yes, and I want to say the highlight of this has been you pointing out the cop noises, because I'm still like internally laughing about that, and it makes me want to just go watch that movie just for that. So I appreciate you.
Well, you're welcome.
Yes.
All right. Well, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
Well, you can find Pretty Killer Podcast and Future Creatures DTF on Instagram. We both have a YouTube page. I'm on Twitter. I'm on, I do the TikToks. I try to do the TikTok thing. And it's all just our names, Pretty Killer Podcast and Future Creatures DTF.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. And we'll definitely have you on again in the future.
Well, I appreciate you asking me to be on. I had a blast, and thank you very much.
Thanks again to Jordana for joining me. Next week, Kat Velour joins me to talk about Halloween H2O and Halloween Resurrection. Thanks for listening. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast composed by Jerry Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm GeekThulu on Twitter and Geek.Thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by donating to the Ko-fi page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.